see. All right. Geoff, welcome.
Good to be here.
Let's start with an easy one. Tell us your story, Geoff.
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Born and raised in upstate New York, where I am now. EA, wandering soul, fan of ancient history and language, sports, and I met you through the All-NBA, and you've been one of the relationships that we collectively really worked hard in developing and keeping, and so I'm excited to use your platform as a little bit of my platform and talk to the people about a world that they probably don't see at all, because good for them at this point in their lives. Maybe they don't need to, or maybe they never thought about it. But this is how we achieve actual change. We have difficult conversations about all our life experiences, because you've experienced things as a father and a parent that I haven't. So just picking that one simple subject that, oh, you can talk about that, and I can be like, you know what, Russell, I never thought about whatever like that. So I appreciate you bringing that to me, and that's the beauty of conversation.
Let me ask you a few questions about your work thoughts. I've been in marketing, I've been in sales. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What is the aim of terrific marketing?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. For me, it depends on the stage of the company, right? Like, my last job was a 7-year-old startup. So it was awareness, and we're going to try to convert you into the sales funnel, buzzword. But a place like Nike, they're always like, you guys know who the F we are. Like, we don't have to sell you on who we are, but we don't want to be an older brand that struggles to innovate. So Nike's biggest thing is, we're going to stay on the cutting edge. We might not be first, but we're putting a lot of time, money, and effort into staying on the cutting edge of technology, social issues. I'm not talking about whether you agree with them or disagree with them, but they put a lot of effort into being in the front, versus a lot of more established brands like a Coca-Cola, for example. They're massive too, but they're a lot more methodical. They're a lot slower to embrace change, because the worst thing you can say in marketing or business in general is, this is the way we've always done it, so why fix it? That's a one-way ticket to death, in my opinion.
It's interesting you bring that up. What's the attitude that leads to that? Or maybe another way to phrase the question is, what do most marketing experts not properly understand about the world? What's missing in their worldview?
I think oftentimes we get too siloed. Just like any industry, like you used to be in real estate, and it's buzzword, whatever. I'm not a realtor. I have good friends that are, so I'm somewhat familiar with your language. But if I'm in a conference with 20 realtors and you guys are just going, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. If you're at a Major League Baseball get together with me and 20 like upper level baseball people, but when you get upper level, you have no idea what we're talking about. So I think where I'm just sitting there nodding along, yeah, man, you're right. Pardon the pun, but it's so inside baseball. We have a hard time getting out of our own way with jargon and with job security, and I'm just trying to position the product better or get a message out. Like, does it have to be so esoteric? Probably not, but every industry does that. It's interesting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. So one thing I'm interested in your view on is, okay, you work in marketing, you're a marketing expert. Let's fast forward 25 years. And what's the marketing equilibrium look like? Are we all still going to care about SEO and a few small number of very powerful social media companies? What's that world of marketing and attention going to look like? And how will effective marketers reach their audience, the right audience?
I want to talk about something I fully don't understand. I'm doing a lot of reading on myself, but I think a lot of it is going to be Web3 in probably 25 years. What is that? Web 4, Web 5? I think a lot of it is going to be AI, because AI is just now starting to gain a much wider breadth of traction. It's gone from, oh my God, this is cool and yet creepy, to how can we make it for better open houses and just using real estate, and how can we use it to cut the downtime in producing advertisements, because if we use AI, it's all programming. We don't have to pay to reshoot hundreds of thousands of dollars. If and AI in traffic lights, and I think it's just gonna proliferate our day to day, like walking down the street. And then I think in 25 years, we're just gonna become, obviously we'll be 25 years to the older, you and I, but I think we're just gonna become more and more device, I hate to say this, but it's the reality, device dependent. Like we're on right now, we're on a Zoom call right now. Before the pandemic, what the F was Zoom? What the F was a video call in general? We did it, but and somebody like myself who's fortunate enough to have cultivated a global base of colleagues and friends, like 2.5 years ago, I was still sitting right here at the time, and I was able to go to London real quick, but I could also hop over to Germany real quick. And I never left upstate New York, but in one day I could be in 6 countries at once. But before the pandemic, did we all think that was a reality? No. It's just crazy to think where we could go in 25 years.
Do you think that in that world of Web 4, Web 5, Web 6, whatever it is, then do you think that the marketing or messaging here, I'm talking personally, maybe a little less B2B, but is the messaging bombardment just going to accelerate and become even more intense? What's the stat we all see? 4,000 or 5,000 different marketing messages a week, or whatever the number is. Is that going to continue, or do you see some sort of change in that evolving or coming, where people saying, I'm not down with this anymore, stop this marketing, I'm going to be available to a very small number of highly resonant messages only, and everything else I'm going to get rid of, totally out of my view? How's that going to evolve?
I think that's a great question, because I think it's chicken and egg, quite frankly. Remember a couple of years ago when Clubhouse was hot, and we were all trying to get invites to Clubhouse, and then you finally got one, and it was all people talking about how rich they were on, like, oh, I flip houses. And remember, there was a window of time where we were all like, ooh, Clubhouse exclusive, I need to get one of those invites. I worked for the better part of a year to get an invite, and when I finally got one, I was so hyped that I made one worthwhile connection that I still have, that I enjoy. But once I finally got on Clubhouse, after about 2 weeks, I was like, this is bullshit. So the question is, like, how much of it is fad technology, as in every walk of life? This car is hot now. This way of commuting is cool now. But I think when it comes to all the platforms, and this is, I probably shouldn't be saying this as a marketer who spends a lot of time in social, but I'm going to be brutally honest. I hate social media from a personal perspective and a work perspective, because there's always a new platform to figure out, and there's always a new algorithm adjustment to figure out. And just when you figure out the new adjustment, they've already moved on to something else. And then you got to figure out, okay, like my last job, for example, where's our audience? Our audience is LinkedIn. All right, so I'm going to put some stuff on Twitter just so that we're active on Twitter, because the first thing when you Google somebody, like their third on the Google is their Twitter handle, so you don't want to be dead. But you're always staying up on technology. You're always trying to figure out where your audience is going to shift to. It's a headache. And to answer your question most directly, I think there's going to have to be a balance point where, like you said, people, you and me and millions of others, are going to be, over time, of course, enough, because I don't want to be business and privately on 17 and a half platforms and have various parts of my personal data on 17 and a half platforms. And then as a parent, you got to worry
Yep.
about your kids at various ages on 17 and a half platforms. Like my mom says this all the time, and I'm 39, my little sister is 15. So I'm the oldest, she's the youngest. That's the gap in the family. My mom says all the time, my older three kids weren't saints, but I didn't have to worry about social media. So parenting is totally different now than it was 20 plus years ago. I wasn't a saint, but we had dial up in the house. And 20 years ago was a long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago. And if my dad was like, hey man, I got to make a call. And I'm like, Dad, I'm playing a game. He didn't give a you know what. So he would just pick up the phone and hang it up real quick. That's the shift in a relatively short period of time. Like the internet that I grew up with versus the internet that you and I are using right now was completely different. It's insane. There's got to be some sort of balance point, but I don't know what it is. But there's way too many platforms out there right now.
Let me transition to asking some questions about your work on behalf of people with disabilities. So one thing that I was really fascinated by, and you alluded to it earlier, but talk to us about, so not legally, not in their laws, but in their customs and sort of the posture of the people. What countries are most friendly to disabled people and the cause of people with disabilities?
In my experience, only speaking for myself, caveat, Europeans.
And
because they've gotten a head start. And I know a lot of people that are in HR in European companies, and they will have their employer, like people they work for, ask them, how are we doing as far as diversity and inclusion? And everybody says that Germans are rude. I'm a New Yorker. That doesn't bother me. We're very similar in makeup that way. But literally, Russell, every German I encountered, except for the one dude at Lufthansa, but every German I encountered, whether that's you as a random person on the street or somebody in the official capacity at the train, airport, hotel, whatever, was above and beyond nice. And one thing that frustrates me is I heard it when I was making preparations to go over and all the things. Like, do you know how old Europe is? And my response, being the sarcastic a-hole that I am, was, do you know how young America is? And do you know how many problems like we have with like streets and sidewalks and elevators? And I would always say, I don't expect something that was built in 1840 to be handicap accessible. I don't. People with physical disabilities didn't live past the age of 5. And if they did, it was a miracle. Like I was 2 pounds when I was born. If I was born 30 years earlier, which isn't that long, I'm probably dead. So you just have to take a realistic approach. Like, oh, that castle was built in 1640. There's no ramp for you to get up. Hello, it was a building designed to keep people out, you moron. But I didn't get to do those things because my trip went sideways, but those were the things that I was looking to do. And those are the types of conversations I had with people over here before I went. You just got to take a realistic approach. And thankfully, you know me, I'm an outgoing person. So I was able to make random friends on the train and, hey, I need help doing this. Hey, I got you. Bang. So I was able to use my personal skill as just like a people person, which some people may not have to. And when in doubt, find a cop. And in Germany, there's a lot of them. And it's one of my favorite German words, Polizei. It's just fun to say. So if you get in a situation where you're lost or weird people or whatever, you just go find a cop. I adhere to that rule over here too. So that's what I did. To answer your question, I think Europeans just have a lot more open, fearless viewpoint of people with disabilities, for sure.
Is that true of the law as well? Does European law better recognize the rights of disabled people and protect them better than, say, American or Asian? Or what's your experience on the legal side of things?
In certain areas, I would say yes. Like the only two countries I can speak to, England and Germany, because I have professional connections up the yin yang in both countries. It is almost impossible to be fired as a person with a disability in either country. Like you really have to do something heinous to be fired. Whereas this last job, I was let go, it's business, whatever. But my previous job before that, I was fired. It was a crappy job, not worried about it. But everybody I've talked to in Germany, and like in Germany, for example, they have special contracts for people with disabilities that are, if you accept a job, it's again, obviously it's performance based, but it is really hard. Like you have to, I'm not trying to make light of the situation, but you have to really suck to get, okay, we've exhausted all avenues. Russell, Geoff, you've got to, we like you as a person, but you got to go professionally, you got to go somewhere else.
What about other aspects of the law, like housing and building accessibility? You've talked a little bit about that, but how's Europe on those fronts?
In Germany, because I'm still looking at moving there long term. It's just going to be delayed much longer than I wanted by several years, probably. There's special vouchers that you can get, even as a non-German citizen, where if you want apartment X and I want apartment X and it's a handicap unit and I have a voucher that I got through whatever office, they have to give it to me over you. Where in America, even if it's a handicap accessible unit by law, like it's pretty much first come first. If you put in for it before me, it's pretty much first come first serve. But other than the legal side, what I was attracted to is just the overall mindset of being wanted. Like even though this recent Germany trip went bad, I still feel adopted by German culture, German society. Even before I went, it was because I don't feel seen as a person with a disability in America. You see me as a colleague and friend, and you see what my life is because you're both those things. But I feel institutionally, I'm not seen. Legally, there's physical barriers and invisible barriers put up for me. No matter what I achieve, I'm still like held down. And I don't use that language lightly because that's very interesting language, right? I'm oppressed, but there's things in place that no matter what I do, there's less housing inventory. And then even if you find a place, it's legally handicap accessible, but is it livable handicap accessible? Those are two totally different questions. Oh, it has bars in the bathroom. It's legally handicap accessible, but I can't get in the front door. So I can't live there by myself. Like,
so tell me a little bit more about that, about not being seen in America. Tell me what that means and how that manifests itself.
I've never been the woe is me type. I've always been these are my cards. I'm just gonna bulldog some crap. That's always been my mentality. It'll always be my mentality. The older you get, you realize we all break, and it's like, why is this so hard? I'm just trying to go to work, pay my taxes, vote, and complain about it like everybody else. But why is housing so hard? Why is finding work so hard? Why is keeping work above and beyond the normal flow of business? Because my last job, it was nobody's fault. It's just business. In my experience, keeping a job has been hard. And some of that, to be fair, is on me. But as a grown person, you can admit, like I'm culpable in that as well. But then other parts of that, one company in particular that I obviously won't name, but they weren't invested in giving me the tools to succeed. They just wanted to use me as, look, we hired a disabled guy who also happens to be part black. So check and check. And I'm wise enough to the game where I recognize what it is. And make no mistake, I'll use that to my advantage too. I said this to a friend the other day. The older I get, the more I realize, to put it succinctly, the more I realize the margin for error on my decisions, where I live, where I travel to, jobs I take or don't, people I interact with, people I date. My margin for error is in many cases smaller than it might be for you because like I got stuck in Germany. I had to figure a way out specifically because of my chair. That's new. I never experienced that before. So it's always like, without being what was me, is like, why is this so hard? Like, why is every step of the way so hard? Like, I'm just trying to find a place to live in Louisville or
Yeah.
Charlotte or wherever. I just want to pay my taxes and vote because that's my duty as a not only an American citizen, but that's your duty no matter where you go, right? So I just want to find a place where I can be the best version of myself at work and in the community and all those things.
Can you give us, can you give us an example of just one facet of your life that makes things so hard? And the two that you and I have talked about that stood out, but if there's something else you want to talk about that is the height of the bed, like being off a few inches, and then also physically transporting your electric wheelchair is enormously challenging. Again, those are the two examples that stood out to me, but if there's a better example in your mind, tell us
Those are
about what is so hard.
those are great examples because, and I'm a wanderer. I've lived in 5 states. I have friends all over the place. Can't wait to go to Oregon later this year to see one of my best friends. Can't wait to go down to Louisville. I grew up in horse country myself, so I'm very at home in the idea of going to Louisville. Like I get around in spite of my logistical challenges, but even the room I'm in right now, I'm sleeping in my brother's old bed and it's high, but my chair, because I paid for it, can elevate. The seat can elevate. So I raised the seat up to make it easier to get in. But I can't elevate it too high because I need to be able to get back out of bed. When we talked about before, I was in my hotel room in DC and the bed was way too high over there. So I was able to convince the hotel staff, and they were down with it, more importantly, to like, hey Russell, I want to get into bed. Okay, we'll come up, we'll put you in. And they actually put me on the toilet too, because the toilet was really low. I felt like I was sitting on a little kid's training setup. That's how low it felt to me. It was a
Yeah.
standard toilet. But and then the German experience, I booked the hotel with my friends at Wheels of the World, like I said, and they book travel experiences specifically for people with physical disabilities. There's no way of knowing that the height of the bed in Germany is always like 22 inches, which is 2 feet essentially. And then we were like, what about London? And similar height. And if that's the German disability standard, they did nothing wrong. So the first couple of nights, the guys at the hotel lifted me in after we tried to jerry rig the bed, make it put pillows underneath the mattress, put the mattress up on wooden blocks
To
and
raise it up so that you could get in.
get in and out. Yeah. And I was like, and so they agreed to put me in and out. And in my head, I was like, this isn't going to last long because they're going to get a memo from management being like, we're liable, because that's been my experience before. Yeah. We're liable if we drop them or if we hurt them. So that lasted 2 nights. 6 nights I spent in my chair. And that's what led me to come home in large part because I can't do this for the next 30 nights. I just can't. Like my chair reclines, it's fancy, but I'm still sitting when my chair reclines. So I don't get the muscle rest of, like we all do, of being flat. And as an adult, you have to make, did I want to come home? No, because I had nowhere to come back to because I moved out of my apartment. That's why I went to Charlotte for a little while and all that. But as an adult, sometimes you get put in situations, whatever those situations might be in your own life, and you got to make really difficult snap choices. Like I'm in a situation, whatever it might be, and the only person that's going to get out of the situation is me. What the hell are we going to do? But yeah, it's just little things like that. Like I'm just trying to go to sleep, or I'm trying to go to the bathroom, or I'm trying to get to work or visit my friends or family. My number one fear when I fly is not what happens to me, because if something happens to me, it's just my time. But my number one fear is what shape is my chair, whatever chair I'm using at the time. What shape is my chair going to be in when I get on one plane, get off a plane, get on another plane, get off a plane. In the
Mhm.
last 9 weeks, maybe, I think I've been on 11 planes.
Whoa.
Germany, there and back, Atlanta to Charlotte, then Charlotte back to Atlanta to here. So maybe not 11 planes, but legit probably 7 or 8 planes.
And that's just so I'm just thinking about, for example, in my life, my wife and I, we don't like checking bags. We carry on.
I
But if we
hate
had to check a bag and it
I
got
hate
like,
bags. Everybody hates
yeah,
checking
like,
bags.
yeah. But at the end of the day, like, really, with a few exceptions, like, big deal. You lose, even if you lose expensive clothing, like, it can all be replaced. But an airline messes up your chair, and that, tell me if I'm right. I'm assuming that would be pretty life changing in a very bad way, very fast.
Absolutely. And there was a recent stat, I forget where I saw it, but 1 in 6 chairs is usually broken on an airplane. Uh, yeah, it's very traumatic. The airline is responsible for it. They do fix it, and they have gobs of money set aside, so it's not a hurt to them. And there's a process. But in the meantime, you're in a. I'm using the word foreign, not in the sense of overseas, but you might be in a different city where you may or may not know anybody. They've got to get you a loaner, which picture using somebody else's car and legs to get around, because that's basically you're using a rental car, which you've done that, but picture using like your wife's legs, who work similar to what you're used to because they're legs, but the gait is a little different, and the angles of how you approach counters is a little different because spatial relations is different. But meanwhile, so you got to wait to get a loaner, and then you got to wait till they fix your main chair, and they may or may not have the parts handy. If they don't, obviously, it takes more time. But yeah, my number one fear when flying is not, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? My number one fear is what's going to happen to my chair. And the one that I'm sitting in as I talk to you today is 30 plus $1,000. So I'm sitting in a car, like the price of a car. And like I said, I like to get around, but my number one fear is what shape's my chair going to be?
So wait, if you get off the plane and let's say your chair's damaged, you go to customer service. Now, will they repair the chair there, or are you like, you got
No.
to get a loaner there, and then like you're flying
What
on to your next city, and they're going to get it to you at some point? Like, what's that look like?
the short version is what happens is you go to let's take let's take United because I fly them most of the time. So you go to United, the baggage office, which is obviously right next somewhere near the baggage carousels, and you sit and you're usually with a person because they've helped you physically off the plane. In my case, and you're like, "Hey, my chair is broken, blah blah blah," but like the joystick's jacked up or whatever, it doesn't work, whatever. So then they open a case, you fill out a whole bunch of forms, then they put you in contact with their wheelchair company of record. It's essentially the short version is they basically have a credit card on file. It's just build the account. Let's say I'm going to visit you in Louisville, right? So they're like, where are you going to be? I'm going to be at the Smiths. Their address is blah, blah, blah. Okay, we'll try to get somebody out to you by Tuesday. Let's say it's a Saturday. What am I going to do for Russell and me and the girls? We had this and this plan. Well, unless Russ and them are going to physically carry me, I guess we're not doing that. Or
Mhm.
maybe somebody who's got like a hospital issue fold up just to where you would have to push me and stuff, but at least it's better than nothing. And then the person comes out, eventually they evaluate it, they write it up, you sign a whole bunch of crap. And it could be a day, it could be a week. One of the biggest problems is Like, how long are you going to be in that location? I'm going home. I'm scheduled to go home in 3 days. It's going to take us 7 to get. Shoot, that's not a me problem. It is a me problem, but that's a you problem. And then you have to be stern but respectful and be like, look, I'm leaving in 4 days. So don't give me, it's gonna take 7+ to get the wing ding here. I need the wing ding here now. Because again, what if you're not in a place where you can stay? What if I might be able to extend my stay in my hotel, but I'm paying for that. Another curse of disability, I got friends everywhere, but I can't necessarily stay with them because can I get my chair in your house? So most of the time it's I'm coming to visit you, but I'm staying in a hotel. So do you have the money to extend your stay while they wait for the wing ding? Probably not, because hotels are expensive. So it's a whole
mess. Yeah.
yeah, that's the nutshell of what usually happens.
So let's say you could wave a magic wand and make something better for disabled people. One thing, one way. What would that be?
Oof. I'm a kid of the 80s, so I gotta be true to myself. X-Men Forever. Professor X was my childhood hero for obvious reasons. He was the first person with a disability I saw in a wheelchair, being a badass, leading people. But I would come up with a more sustainable method of transportation because even though I'm a member of Atlanta Paratransit, like where they pick you up at a certain location and they bring you to a certain, it's an offshoot of the bus, but it's not like we stop everywhere. They might stop and pick other people up, but they bring you directly to address. And then Charlotte has their own version and Louisville has their own version. But when you go to every city, you gotta find a doctor and you gotta fill out the same different versions of the same paperwork, basically certifying that you're physically disabled or mentally disabled. I would just make it so that there's a national, or let's dream big, global database, because I like to think of myself as a global person. This person is disabled as defined by the DSM-4, which is the book that everybody accepts for intellectual and physical disabilities. ADHD is in there. All those things are in there. Okay, so if the USA deems this person disabled, the Germans will recognize that, right? Or just keeping it in our own country, if this person is registered for paratransit services or aid services in home health in Atlanta, like why do I have to redo that in Louisville? Because the way it's set up now is every state runs both those areas very differently. So like every state I go to, like when I was in Georgia, I had to get a psych-eval for a home health aide because it was run as a part of the Georgia Department of Developmental Disabilities. So I had to prove my cognitive abilities too. And then due to the worker shortage, they couldn't find somebody for me. So I lived there for a year and a half and was still on the waiting list to get a. And thankfully, I'm relatively self-sufficient, but I do need help. But yeah, that's the one thing I would change for people with disabilities. Just make a database, like you fill out the paperwork once, maybe twice, to show that you're disabled and your condition isn't changing. So wherever you go, you can still get. You might have to notify the Kentucky office of whatever. Hey, I'm in Kentucky now, but I don't have to go through the burning hoops of a doctor and forms, and because I get Social Security money right now, and so the government recognizes me as disabled. So why do I have to prove that in every state that I'm in? That's the one thing I think would. I don't know how much of an undertaking that is, probably massive, but I think it would just streamline so much of, hey man, just like anybody else, I deserve to go where the opportunities are. If the opportunities are in Kentucky for jobs or a better overall lifestyle outside of work, like we talked about in a previous call, work-life balance, I deserve the opportunity to go to Kentucky or Oregon
Yep.
or wherever. It's like
Hmm.
wherever fits my lifestyle, I should go like anybody else.
Can I ask you a couple of last questions on this?
Sure.
What's something that being disabled has taught you about the world or life that, for example, I probably don't know, and I don't have it. I just don't appreciate it or know it, or I'm aware of it. Some insight that your life has given you that I have no idea.
I wouldn't say that there's something obvious that you have no idea, but I learned from a very early age the importance of advocacy for myself.
Hmm.
And I give my parents a lot of credit for that because I was involved in my medical decisions from the time I was 13, 14. Now, obviously, my parents made the final decision because I'm a minor, but I was, hey, Geoff, they're going to operate on you. They're going to do this. The recovery looks like this. How do you feel about this? Oftentimes, doctors wouldn't talk to me. They would talk to my, most notably my mom, because she was there most often. And my mom would be like, talk to him. You're cutting him. He's in the room too. They would look through me as if I wasn't even. I joke and say I'm from New York, and I'm the oldest of six, so I'm loud. But I think the thing that I learned perhaps more aggressively than most people is if you don't advocate for yourself in your personal life, at work, or whatever space you might like, nobody else is going to do it. So even if that involves ruffling some feathers, you got to be willing to say, hey, down here, I need help. But I think the number one blessing and a curse being physically disabled has given me is just a different lens to view the world, like physically getting around places. I have a radar that's built for elevators, and the famous church in Cologne, there's steps, right? And I wanted to go inside. They're renovating it, so I couldn't go inside. But it was just like, how do I get around here? And you kind of use your life experience to look for things that most people don't see, and angles, and having to ask random people on the subway platform, hey, can you help me jump this gap right here? Because I'm not going to make it. It just forces you to interact with the world. Because it's not like I can do it. I'll pick a bag off a carousel. So I have to go to you, like random stranger. Can you help me pick a bag off the carousel? Sure. So I would say that's the biggest takeaway.
What else would you like me, us, readers, to know about disabled people or the cause of people with disabilities that we probably don't know and we haven't talked about?
Okay, I've thought a lot about this one, but succinctly, just ask us. Like so many people are, I'm saying us in general, so many people are afraid to offend. And I get that sensibility because I'm guilty of it just as much as you guys are. But include us in the process. Hey, does this layout work of a bus? Does this, how do we make this space more, how do we make this website more? I've said this in my writing, but I'll say it here too. We don't expect you to have the larger you to have all the answers, but together we can share perspectives. Oh, I didn't think about that from an able-bodied perspective either because I'm not able-bodied. So by having the dialogue of back and forth, we both learn some valuable crap. But I think for our part of it, we're afraid, we in numbers are afraid to say, no, we need to be a part of this conversation. And from your side of it, as an able-bodied person, I don't want to offend. I want to be politically correct because that's where we are now. Like, so how do I ask somebody without acting like I'm talking down to their physical or mental ability? But I would say just like I like to live by the worst question is one that goes unasked. I would rather you ask me a question and you give me the opportunity to even say, you know what, Russell, I'm uncomfortable answering that. But at least you gave me a space to come into and say, I'm uncomfortable. So even in that answer, which is a non-answer, you gave me the opportunity to answer, as opposed to, I don't want to ask that because I don't want to offend him, or from
Yeah.
my side of it, I don't want to offend you. We need to become better as a group, having difficult conversations and going into really vulnerable spaces, because that's the only way crap is going to change, is if we're like, what do you see from a budget perspective? Okay, that's your budget on fixing this building. What can we do within, because I'm paying for the budget too. What can we do within reason? I'm not asking you to knock the building down and put up just as a small example, but just to have ongoing dialogue. Like, how is this? It sucks. Okay, how can we fix it? A website, a building, whatever the case might be.
All right, let's close in the last few minutes tackling some questions about one of your passions, sports.
Oh boy.
And let's start with, who is your favorite Texas Longhorns football coach and why?
Of all time,
Sure, yeah, all time, yeah.
Daryl Royal, because he's the GOAT. I'm contractually obligated to say that, but he really is though. But I I really enjoyed working. I was around during the end of Mac Brown and Coach Strong's tenure, which Coach Strong, that didn't go very well, to put it mildly, but he was always cool to me. And I served in the Texas athletic department under, at the time, the winningest coach in college baseball, who was kind of a rough around the edges, no nonsense guy to everybody. So that really prepares you for life as well. You don't have to like everybody you're around, but you respect them and you do your job.
Who's going to win the college football playoff this year?
Anybody but TCU, because I hate them.
How about the Super Bowl? Who's going to win the Super Bowl?
Oh man, the NFL is such a cluster fudge. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say the San Francisco 49ers, because
Ooh, wow. Whoa. Hey, that is going out on a limb, man.
that offense is nuts.
Who is your team in the NFL?
I'm a Giants fan.
Oh, Giants. And wait, in baseball, though, it's Mets?
Yeah, I'm a Mets fan.
Oh, okay, that's right. All right. Speaking of the Mets, when you and I talked a little bit about this, but I want your answer on the record. When will my beloved Washington Nationals be relevant in baseball again?
Probably long after we're both dead.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm holding on to my T-shirt from 2019 celebrating our World Series. It has holes. It is totally faded. I am never, ever getting rid of that, man. It's what I have. It's what I have.
I respect that for sure.
Is baseball going to be a top professional sport in 50 years?
Sadly, no, not at all.
Really? How come? Why?
Because it's slowly dying. Like, it's not going to die tomorrow for sure, but the younger and younger generations are playing baseball in numbers, and
Yeah.
baseball doesn't do a good job of marketing its stars at all. So you don't grow up wanting to be the next like Mike Trout, because you don't see him plastered on billboards and video games. And baseball does a horrible job of marketing its stars. And there are a ton of super young stars in the game, the Juan Sotos that are like 22 years old. Like, you need to. And
you just had to say that name, for example, didn't you? Like Washington Nationals, like, you just had to put the stake in the heart.
Of course, I can't stand the Nationals either, but I'm a baseball degenerate. So I'm, even in the off season, I'm on MLB trade rumors a couple times a day. Like, I'm reading all the things, and I watch probably 140 Met games a year at least. But baseball is really hard to watch because it takes, and I'm gonna watch, and you're gonna watch, but baseball itself, it takes 3, 4, 5 hours. I like Formula One too, but Formula One is over in 2 hours, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's done. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's done.
Like, we
Done.
get all the excitement we can handle, and you wrap a bow up, it's over in 2 hours. But you get a freaking Yankees and Red Sox game, that's 5 hours right there. Even a week before the game starts, you're like, oh, that's a 5-hour game. I don't know how it's going to go, but that's probably going to be 4.5, 5 hours. Baseball's tried to fix it, but Like I said, I'm a degenerate. You're into it too, but there's not enough of us, and going to baseball games is really expensive, so it's a multi-layered
Well,
issue for sure.
so so in your view, what is the smartest thing baseball could do to better market its young, hot, kick-ass stars?
They gotta have better. They gotta find where the kids are on social media because Facebook started when I was in college, so we were all big into. Hey Russ, we met in the dining hall one time. You're on Facebook. Add me. That was our thing back in 04, 06, whatever. Like my younger siblings, they view Facebook as a dinosaur. They don't use Facebook. So you got to find out where the kids are. TikTok. Do you gamify TikTok and make baseball somehow appealing to? Again, you're not going to get everybody. You need to get a portion of each generation because you need to grab people when they're younger, like we were grabbed, and then you get older and you get jobs and you have discretionary income and you go to see the Nationals or the Mets. I was indoctrinated by my father and my grandfather, just like you were, but you need to grab them younger so that way you can carry them through the various like age cycles. Because the average age of a baseball fan is 55 to 62, and shocker, white. But most of the baseball players are not white. So how does that work?
Why isn't soccer more popular in the US? I get that it's risen in popularity in the last 20 years compared to, let's say, average level of popularity in other countries, way, way lower. Why is that?
As my mom pointed out the other day, we just have so many other options. And like American football is ours, and it's a bedrock item of culture. And baseball is ours, and it's a bedrock item of culture. Versus, I was watching Germany yesterday, and I was conversing with my tutor, who is German, but she lives in Florida. And she was like, "Yeah, I was talking to my grandparents and my parents in Cologne. The whole city is shut down right now. 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. The match started at 8 o'clock over there. So, with the exception of like emergency personnel, like firefighters and whatnot, yes, it was a Sunday, but nobody was doing anything because most of the German population was somewhere watching the match. That's what soccer in Europe in general is. There's a World Cup match, shut it down.
Shut it down.
Find a bar, find a house. That's what we're all doing. Like any green space that have a TV and you got thousands of people like watching a gigantic screen, that's normal for them.
All right, two last questions. Who is the most overrated athlete today?
Oh boy. No, I'm trying to remove personal bias. Overrated football player, Zeke Elliott. Then baseball player. I could think of about 6, but I won't name any of them because they might see this podcast. They might see this video and hate me.
It doesn't have to be by sports, just the most overrated athlete.
Oh,
Ezekiel Elliott.
Okay. The most overrated athlete is probably Cristiano Ronaldo. Yes, he's still very good, but he's my age and he's not worth $700,000 a week. Yeah, I said that. $700,000 a week. So is he still? You can still be very good and still be overrated. So yeah, I would say he's the most.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah. How about underrated? Who's the most underrated athlete?
There are so many. There are so many young up and coming baseball players that like. I think the world of Adley Rushland. He's the #1 overall pick a couple years ago. He's with the Orioles now. He's already up with the Orioles. He's a catcher, which is difficult, but he's just so good. I've been a fan of his since he was in college. He's the best player in college. He's awesome to watch at the pro level. I would say he's the most underrated athlete, like for me right now. He doesn't get a lot of press because the Orioles are young and he's in Baltimore, but he was in like a major market. He'd be not quite like a Juan Soto, but he'd be in that. I'm 24 and crazy good. Soto who came up at 19, and you stop and realize the dude is only 24. That's insane.
Yeah. He could do his 10 years before he's 30, retire, and still make the Hall of Fame.
He could legit do a healthy Sandy Koufax. He could retire at 32 and in a healthy way, like not injury retirement, but I played 12 years.
Yeah, Barry Sanders. I did my 10 years. I'm out of here. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I don't feel like being a member of the Detroit Lions and being
The
terrible.
Detroit Lions, exactly.
So,
but we're not making a play. We're not making a Super Bowl. Yeah, I'm just done.
And then a decade later, Kelvin Johnson does the same thing.
Same thing. Exact same thing. Has a great quarterback. Never mind. I'm out of here.
Like one of the best wide receivers ever. I just don't want to be hit anymore.
I will give you $1 million to get out of my contract. I'm tired of you. It's not me, it's you. I'm done.
Exactly.
Well, Geoff, this is awesome. Thank you so much. This was amazing. I appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me.